The disappearance of Madeleine shocked the world, but it was the parents' actions that put everyone on edge. These 6 details completely changed how the case was perceived. Picture an old clock hanging on the wall of a vacation home. The second hand stopped precisely at 9:05 p.m. No tick-tock, just a silence heavy as concrete. In the room, scattered toys, a doll fallen on the floor. Everything seems normal, but something feels off. No screams, no tears, just dry eyes and composed faces. From the start, Madeleine's parents' behavior raised more suspicions than clues. While the world expected despair, they displayed an unsettling calm. Coldness, guilt, restrained desperation. What began as a family tragedy turned into a global puzzle. And at the heart of it all were 6 actions that sparked more questions than answers and still divide opinions today. How do you react when your child disappears and the entire world expects you to grieve in a specific way? Pain is real, but it doesn't follow a script. Kate and Jerry McCann faced not only the loss of their daughter, but also public judgment about how they should feel and express that pain. Their composure was seen by many as indifference, fueling suspicions and theories. Not all grief is visible, but not all restrained behavior is innocent. Their silence spoke louder than words ever could. This video isn't just about what Madeleine's parents did, it's about what they couldn't hide. If this resonates with you, stick with me, because what's coming next changes everything. It's like looking at an unbalanced scale. On one side, a child's disappearance. On the other, the parents' behavior. And no matter how hard we try, the weight of their reactions doesn't seem to match what happened. The night Madeleine vanished, Kate and Jerry McCann didn't scream, didn't cry in public, didn't show the desperation the world expected. Instead, there was control, there was silence, and a calm that to many felt wrong, as if they were following a script, but the role wasn't convincing. But why did this bother people so much? Because there's a standard grief we've been taught to expect. Television, movies, the media, they've all shown us how someone should react when they lose a child. We expect red eyes, hands on the face, a trembling voice. When that's missing, something inside us feels off. And without realizing it, judgment begins to form. But pain, real pain, doesn't always show up the way we imagine. It can hide behind rationality, detachment, a desperate attempt to stay in control when everything is collapsing inside. And that's exactly what confused the world in this case. While the media showed pictures of Madeleine smiling, while the world left teddy bears at the apartment's doorstep, her parents stood before cameras with a restrained demeanor. Too calm, too lucid. No tears but prepared speeches. No outbursts but rehearsed phrases. This raised an uncomfortable question. Were they truly suffering or just pretending well? And that's where the confusion starts. When someone's behavior doesn't match the pain we imagine, our minds search for another explanation. And often they settle on the most obvious one: suspicion. It's in that empty space between the grief we expected and the reaction we actually saw that suspicions were born. And it's exactly there that the first signs appeared that something in this case never quite made sense. In the early days after the disappearance, Kate McCann appeared in neat clothes, hair tied back, face expressionless. Jerry spoke clearly, with technical terms, with a coldness that felt almost clinical. They were always together in interviews, always with the same narrative, always avoiding too much emotion, and the public didn't forgive them. Comments began to circulate. She didn't cry. He's too calm. They seemed more concerned with their image than their daughter. With every new appearance, more judgments, more questions, more eyes scrutinizing what they said, and above all, what they didn't say. But is there a right Many people, when facing such a profound loss, go into autopilot. The body keeps going, the voice comes out, but the person isn't fully there. It's as if everything around them is part of a set. You talk, smile, breathe, but inside it's all empty. And when the whole world is watching, judging, pointing fingers, showing any weakness becomes a risk. Random. Showing too much emotion can seem like a performance. Showing too little can seem like guilt. It's a trap. And perhaps that's why the McCanns took this path. Control, caution, a neutral appearance. But the problem is that, in doing so, they reinforce the biggest question of all. Why don't they react like other parents who've lost children? And it's in this contrast that tension grows, because the public didn't need proof. A glance, a gesture, a reaction that aligned with the pain everyone imagined would have been enough. But that didn't happen. Instead, 6 behaviors emerged that, rather than bringing comfort or trust, raised even more suspicions. Actions that seemed contradictory, incoherent, and completely shifted the course of the investigation, in public opinion. And now we're diving into those signs, because what comes next might change everything you thought you knew about the McCann case. Some things don't need to be said to unsettle you. You feel it, like walking into a room and knowing something's out of place, even if everything looks fine. That's the feeling many had watching Madeleine McCann's parents. Not a direct accusation, but a quiet unease that grew with every restrained gesture, every carefully chosen word. The first sign came from inside their own home. Months after the disappearance, Madeleine's toys remained untouched, pristine. Kate hadn't moved a thing. Some saw this as a way to preserve, to freeze their daughter's room in time, but others, including investigators, found the lack of physical attachment too strange for a mother who'd lost a child. Not a single hug to a stuffed animal, not a whiff of a blanket to ease the longing, and in interviews, what was expected to be vulnerability turned into control. Measured responses, almost rehearsed lines. At times, Kate answered while staring into space, while Jerry seemed focused on not slipping up. No screams, no free-flowing tears. It was all clean, calm, too controlled. And when journalists dared stray from the script with more sensitive questions, the mood shifted. Kate withdrew, Jerry's tone changed, and the conversation ended. Instead of actively cooperating with the investigation, the couple focused on controlling the narrative. They set up a website, hired PR professionals, acted as if the main urgency wasn't finding their daughter, but shaping the world's perception of them. The focus shifted from "where is Madeleine" to "we're not guilty," and that created noise. Because raw desperation doesn't care about image, it overflows. But perhaps the most unsettling moment was their reaction to the sniffer dogs. When British police brought in dogs trained to detect blood and cadaver odor, the results pointed to the McCann's rented car and the apartment. Jerry's response was immediate: dismissal of the methodology. Kate, meanwhile, was visibly rattled. And this wasn't fear, it was an almost indignant discomfort, as if something forbidden had been touched. Tensions escalated when contradictions in their statements came to light. Publicly, Kate and Jerry claimed to trust the investigation, but behind the scenes, they refused to answer certain questions from Portuguese police. They even skipped a crime scene reenactment, citing legal advice. From then on, the tone shifted. It became us against them, the couple against the media, against the police, against public opinion. Meanwhile, the press dug into every detail and found inconsistencies, timelines that didn't add up, contradictory testimonies within their own group of friends, disjointed statements, vague recollections, and an uncomfortable repetition of rehearsed phrases. Our conscience is clear. We're doing everything we can. And with every attempt to reinforce their innocence, doubts grew. Why so much need to convince? Each of these behaviors, on its own, could be explained, but together they formed an odd puzzle, and the missing piece was spontaneous emotion. Sure, everyone reacts differently. Some freeze, some shut down. But here, the unease came from the repetition, the rehearsal, the excess of logic where raw pain was expected. It was like watching a movie where all the elements are there, except genuine feeling. That's when perception shifted. Public opinion began to split. Some defended the McCanns fiercely, arguing that silent suffering was just a way to survive. Others, however, felt something deeper, that it wasn't tears that were missing. It was truth, not in a legal sense, in uneven breathing, in a stumble of speech. And that truth never showed up. And it's in that silence that the unease lives. Because when grief is real, it doesn't need a script. It just happens. It's strange, isn't it? You want to trust, but something in their gestures won't let you. And if you felt that too, then you know what I'm talking about. Some things we try to explain with logic, but only the body understands. A glance, a silence, a reaction that doesn't fit the moment. And sometimes what's scariest is what's missing. And it's in that absence that we'll dive deeper. Because what seemed merely strange starts to feel impossible to ignore. The clock remains frozen. Despite everything said, it still marks 9:05 p.m., as if that moment is trapped in time, and everything since is just echoes. But now, with all the signs laid bare, the question takes on a new tone. It's no longer, why did they act this way? Now it's, what does this behavior reveal or hide? The dilemma isn't in the isolated facts. It's in their combination, the accumulation, the layers stacking up, because that's where the real ethical conflict lies. What's more dangerous? Seeming innocent but not being, or seeming strange and just trying to survive? The world watched Madeleine's disappearance like a real-time drama. They expected a sobbing mother, a father unmoored. But what they saw was restraint, calculation, crafted phrases, no stumbles in speech, no moments of raw vulnerability, the kind that slip out unbidden. And for many, that felt like a mask. But what few stop to consider is that this control might also be a form of defense. Trauma psychology calls it unscripted grief, a reaction that doesn't follow the emotional blueprint the world expects. Sometimes the impact is so overwhelming that a person dissociates. They function on autopilot, they shield themselves, not out of coldness, but desperation. As if the brain is saying, if you feel it all now, you won't survive. And this kind of pain, restrained, silent, rational, is the easiest to mistake for guilt. When the McCanns faced the world, they weren't just grappling with their daughter's loss. They were facing millions of eyes expecting something specific. And what they delivered was the opposite. Too much composure, too little emotion. It's in this gap between the expected and the visible that a distorted mirror forms. Because what you see might reflect one truth, but it could also conceal another. Nietzsche said, pain needs a mask to appear in public. And maybe that's what lies behind so many cold gestures. A mask to protect from collapse, or a mask to hide what can't be said. But how do you tell? Jung reminds us that what we don't face consciously repeats as fate. And this case, this unresolved story, feels just like that. A fate that loops because no one dared look deeply at what unsettles most. A child's disappearance, the parent's strange reaction, the collective unease, the doubt that never left. Instead of answers, we're left with feelings. That gut sense that escapes logic. Something doesn't fit, and no matter how many times you try to rationalize it, the feeling returns. It's like stepping into a perfectly tidy room, but sensing something's wrong. The smell, the lack of dust, the silence. Everything says it's fine, but your body, your instinct, whispers, it's not right. The parent's behavior, from start to finish, was like that room. Too perfect to be natural, too controlled to be spontaneous, and because of that, too unsettling to ignore. But hold on, this isn't a verdict, it's an invitation to doubt. Are we judging pain or a disguise? The answer isn't simple or safe. Maybe it's a mix of both. Maybe we'll never know, but the question must be asked. Because cases like this show how much we're swayed by what we think we should see and how wrong we can be when what we see doesn't match the pain we expected. The broken clock is still there, stuck at 9:05 p.m. And maybe it's trying to say that, for some, time stopped there. But for others, time has never been the same since. Because those who live through such a massive trauma, whether as victims or something more, don't come back the same. Pain transforms, or paralyzes, or hides. And in cases like this, the truth sometimes doesn't scream. It blends into the details, the gestures, the silence, or the excess of words. Time stopped at 9:05 p.m. And maybe that's why everything about them, their gestures, words, silence, felt out of sync, as if they were living in a different emotional time zone, a place where pain doesn't shout, it just stays quiet. The truth is, not all grief looks like what we expect. Some collapse on the floor, others hold press conferences, some lose themselves, others shield themselves with reason. The problem is we've learned to trust visible tears and distrust any pain that's silent, and sometimes it's cold too. Throughout this video, we looked at 6 signs that confuse the world, but maybe what they reveal isn't a clear answer, but an unsettling question. Are we judging their behavior or our own idea of how someone should grieve? The truth might not lie in what was said, but in what was held back. Maybe their strange behavior is just defense, or maybe it's a disguise. And it's exactly that doubt that's stuck in time, like that broken clock, still frozen because no one dared face what it means. The question left is simple and devastating. Could what seems strange to us just be our attempt to make sense of what we can't bear? Now, I want to know what's lingering inside you after all this. There's no need for a right answer. Sometimes what we feel doesn't fit into words. It's just an impression that clings to the skin, as if silence speaks louder than any explanation. And if you felt that weight too, then maybe we're looking in the same direction. Write what comes up. It can be messy. It can be a single loose sentence. but right. Because when we share what we feel, the doubt stops being just ours. It becomes a bridge. I want to read what this stirred in you, because some questions don't ask for answers. They ask for courage. And if you made it this far, it's because something inside you doesn't settle for the obvious. If you want to keep going, there's something I left in the first pinned comment. I won't tell you what it is, just that there's more there. Stuff that doesn't fit in a video, but only click if there's still something inside you asking for more. Some people watch a case like this and turn the page, and some feel the knot. If you're the second kind, we'll meet there.